Today on the RPG Goblin, we are going to be exploring bunkers and badasses, and I'm so excited. And this episode is especially for all of the Borderlands and Tiny Tina's Wonderland fans out there, because this game is Tiny Tina's Wonderland and Assault on Dragonkeep made into a TTRPG. There's mayhem and nonsense, and it is chaos. And it is absolutely beautiful as you just play these badass characters who do badass things, shoot guns, cast magic, fight robots. Like, there's so many options, and it's such a fascinating game. So I can't wait for you to hear the guest and I delve into this game. Which, by the way, the guest for today's episode is Riley from Friend and Foe Adventure Co., a Bunkers and Badasses actual play podcast, which is fantastic. And Riley is such an amazing guest and enjoyed having them on so very much. If you would like to hear what a love letter to Bunkers and Badasses would sound like, please stick to the end, because you get exactly that, along with just delving into how extremely cool this game and how fun it is. So make sure to get comfortable and let's get into it. Welcome, everyone, to the RPG Goblin. I am your host, Willow, and we are going to be talking about a very, very fun game today called Bunkers and Badasses, which is actually inspired, or at least partly inspired, by Borderlands. More specifically, Assault on Dragonkeep and even Tiny Tina's Wonderland, where they've kind of started to recreate a TTRPG feel within the actual video games, which is really, really cool. But in today's episode, I have brought on a wonderful guest, Riley, who is the BM, the Bunker Master of Friend and Foe Adventure Co. Would you please like to introduce yourself and your experience with Bunkers and Badasses so far?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Riley on Twitter and most social medias. I'm at FF Adventure Co. It's the podcast one, but I run it. So, right, that's who you're going to be interacting with on there. And we have like a link tree in most of those social medias. So like you could find our Discord and hang out with us there and things like that. It's great. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, we've been doing this Bunkers and Badasses actual play podcast for like a little over a year and a quarter, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, that's so exciting.
It is so much fun. Like Borderlands is one of my favorite IPs. And so when they announced it at like PAX West, I think years ago, like before they finished it, even saying what it was, I was like, actual play. I'm doing an actual play of this system. And then, of course, yeah, exactly. I was like, this is it. This is my dream. And I started looking up, how to do a podcast. And I started a board game focused podcast just so that I could practice editing and practice like my, social skills, because the pandemic started eventually, like shortly after they announced that. And then like a year and a half later, it finally came out. And so started doing this actual play. And it is so fun. I love this game. I love the whole system that they have and the community that is building around it. It's just like it's badass, right? It makes you feel badass.
Yeah. That is perfect. Oh, that's so amazing. I love that so much that, it was just the immediate draw to the game. Like, yes, that like I know this is meant for me. And I find that fascinating. I love that so much. Actually, I'm curious, how long have you been playing TTRPGs for?
So not that long, sort of. Like, I think in elementary school, I bought at a school fair a Star Wars RPG. I don't even know what it was. It came in this little like almost lunch or like a lunch box. That's what it's called. And and it just had like a couple of characters, right? Like you played as like Han, or you didn't make your own characters, but it was fun. I liked it. And then in high school, my friend introduced me to either 3E or 3.5. I don't know. It was like shortly after 3.5 came out. So I kind of am guessing that it was 3. And that was really fun. And then we played once. We made a character, played once, and then he never invited me to play again. I was like, that was really fun, but whatever, I guess. And then after high school, I started listening to Harmontown, which is Dan Harmon, who created Community, later created Rick and Morty. He would play, he did this podcast, and it was just him and hanging out. And eventually he like asked the audience, like, is there we want to play like Dungeons and Dragons. Is anyone in the audience a dungeon master? And someone volunteered and went up, and then they like became a part of the show. And they ended every show with them playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And like my brother was really into Dungeons and Dragons. And so eventually I would have him like kind of DM a couple of little sessions for me and my friends that were fans of Dan Harmon. And then eventually, after they announced this game a couple of years ago, I was like, I need to get back into it. So I picked Dungeons and Dragons back up and started DMing a couple of sessions just to prep for this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so just like a couple of years. But I also listened to like, the Adventure Zone before that too. Like, so I've always been, it was more about like me not having people to play with than not being interested in actually playing.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. So it's like kind of always been around. It's always been an interest. It's just never quite lined up until it seems like Bunkers and Badasses, which is really cool.
Yeah, exactly. So really, I guess the short answer to what you asked is like 2 years, like I started playing Dungeons and Dragons again, or actually DMing my first session because of that about 2 years ago.
That's fantastic. I mean, compared to quite a few people I've had on, that is a pretty short amount of time, but I think that is so cool that you have experienced and actually have went into the actual TTRPG community itself with other games and not just sticking with Dungeons and Dragons immediately within such a short span of time. I mean, when it was only about 2 years since I've played, I don't think I knew about any other TTRPGs even. So I think that is so cool that it's been, it's getting more popular that people who are starting to play are learning about these games sooner. So I think that's fascinating. But I mean, we're doing this whole episode about Bunkers and Badasses, so let's start getting into that. And with the first question, kind of the one that I like to start off a lot of these episodes with is, what is Bunkers and Badasses?
Yeah, so you already talked about that. It's kind of that Borderlands. So in Borderlands, they talk about like billions of guns. So like when you kill an enemy, loot pops out and you'll get like money and weapons and relics or whatever else, random things, grenade mods. And the whole world is this ridiculous world. Like it is, somebody said it the other day. And I know on your podcast, somebody was talking about, maybe it was Cthulhu, where it's like the dark, oh no, why am I spacing it? Grimdark, thank you. Yeah, and then Grim Noble is like a dark world that's worth saving. And this one,
oh, interesting.
This one I'm not sure where it lands exactly, because it's like, it seems almost like this post-apocalyptic world, but really it's just this like, it's this planet that's not like, it's very full of bandits and psychos and very unsettled and gun manufacturers kind of warring or manipulating people, those kind of things. They're the big politics, which I mean kind of relates to real world, but anyway. And so like it's kind of, it almost seems like a dark world, but it's really not presented in that way. It seems like this post-apocalyptic world, but like there's just goofy stuff happening.
Absolute chaos.
Yeah, and chaos, exactly. Like mayhem is what I think in the third game they eventually came up with, like mayhem. That is like our term for what Borderlands is, and so like it's all about the mayhem, which I think encapsulates it very well. And so yeah, Borderlands 2, they had the characters for one of the DLC come together. They're waiting for somebody to be interrogated, and while they're waiting, they're going to play Bunkers and Badasses, which is essentially D&D, but within that sort of setting. There's no like space travel. Most things, like there's some technology, there's robots, there's guns, there's things like that. And so it's just like importing their world into a Dungeons and Dragons setting. So you're fighting against orcs and goblins and dragons and all of these tropes that come in that fantasy setting.
That is so cool. That is just seriously so cool.
It's great. And that DLC is like, before we started, I was telling you like that DLC I think is one of the best DLC for a video game. It's so masterfully done. You can tell that it was like a work of passion on their part. So
Yeah, people were
yeah.
really excited for this. Really,
Yeah.
loved it. Were wanting to make it, which I think is, I mean, that's the best thing that you should have. That's the best, like any kind of media that has the love put into it and all of that is always going to be fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, it surprises me. So they announced it, and of course, like they want to make that into a real game. Like I think so many people had been doing like what do you call those modules or whatever, like implementing it into 5e, right?
Yeah, like homebrewing it in.
Yeah, homebrewing. I don't know how I spaced that word. It's hot here. That's what I'm going to blame it on. And so when they finally announced it, like there was a lot of excitement, but of course the pandemic hit very shortly after. And then like manufacturing things in China, they were having power outages and stuff. And so they were just like hit with delay after delay after delay. I feel so bad for them. But like I don't think it got as much attention as it should have, just with a spot of bad luck.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, timing, like the pandemic really did mess up some timing on projects like that. But luckily, things are starting to smooth out, and with more actual plays and more people getting into other TTRPGs due to, whole OGL stuff and, things that are happening at Wizards of the Coast. That's for a different time. With all of that happening, people are starting to find out more about these games, which is, I mean, a big reason why I've enjoyed doing this podcast and providing kind of a resource for people learning about them. So that is why, we're talking about bunkers and badasses today.
Yeah. Can I gush about you right now?
Sure, if
in
you
the show?
would like.
Right, you invited me on. I didn't realize that episodes were out because I had like talked to a couple of people, and it's fine. I just didn't see it. My bad. I should have gone immediately and checked, but I just assumed that you were like starting a new show, right? Like, and so then the other day I started listening, and I was like, I looked through and I was like, oh, Call of Cthulhu. Like I bought that and I've started reading through it a little bit, but like I haven't had a lot of time to dive into it because who doesn't love like a good Cthulhu, right? Like a Lovecraftian horror.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And so I listened to that episode and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really good. Like Willow does an amazing job here. And oh no, now I spaced his name. I've listened to so many episodes now.
Luke,
thank you. Yeah, like he did such a great job describing it, and you knew quite a bit about it, and it was like piecing together some of that knowledge that I had from reading it and from listening to some like a little bit of actual plays that have done it. Not a lot though, and it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this. Like, this will be it's on my list of things to play. I've bought several things since. I think I have like 4 or 5 that I have and I want to read. But anyway, yeah, your show, like it's just great. So then the next one was the character creation, right? Like that episode was awesome. The collaborative character creation. That's the key part, is collaborative. And I was like, as somebody who this podcast is my first time running like a full actual campaign. And oh boy, I wish I had heard that stuff beforehand, because like there were so many cool ideas there and tips and stuff. So like if anyone's listening to this because of me, or it's just the first episode you're listening to, like go listen to that episode. That episode's great. And then other than that, like just go and look through like any of the systems and listen to what interests you, because you're gonna learn about it. Like the 10 Candles one, it was getting dark as I was listening to that, and I was getting creeped out just listening to it.
That's a good one. That one's intense.
Yeah, phenomenal. I was like, I might be too much of a scaredy pants to play that game, but I would love the idea of me playing it. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe I will. Maybe I really want to try it after listening to that episode. So, like, even, I've heard of 10 Candles, of course, but there's other ones that I haven't heard, like Bastion and other ones, and I've listened to them all, and they're all just fascinating. So, just binge this show. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. I mean, that means so much because this has seriously been, I mean, it started as just a passion project because my mom was tired of me talking about TTRPGs. Specifically when we were driving back home from Ohio, and she's like, "You need to start a podcast or something. You need to get that energy out somewhere else because I love you, and I'm happy that you're passionate about this, but it needs to be somewhere else because she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, no, but I'm like, that's actually a really good idea. So I started with this and I it was figuring out kind of the direction at first, and then as it was around the time that the OGL stuff originally started that I was close to actually coming out with my first episode since I already had some stuff pre-recorded. And I'm like, I think the whole thing should be focused about how cool these games are. Just like spotlight focus on all these amazing games so that people can see what's out there and see what's fun. So it means literally the world to me of what you've said because this has been just a big passion project and I've been having so much fun with it and I've been meeting so many cool people like you to like
Thanks.
actually, learn more about games because I've only played a handful of TTRPGs so far with D&D being my main one, but I've learned and want to play and have bought a lot more just because of people I've had on and just talking. So thank you. That seriously does mean the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and that passion comes through. It really does. Every single episode, you express that passion, and it's so fun to listen to. It's contagious. That's what it is. It's you are
Exactly.
contagious in the best way. So, I mean, listen, I'm gonna write a review on Apple Podcasts, and I already did my 5 stars on Spotify. But like
My
people,
heart.
Willow hasn't been asking for reviews or anything. I don't think. Have you?
I usually do it at the end of the episode.
Oh, I guess maybe you do. All right. Well, my bad. But still, I go and rate and review it on everything that you can because it does, like, as a podcaster, I know it means the world. Like, when somebody just says something nice, like tweet tweet it at the RPG Goblin, right? That's your Twitter handle, right?
Mhm. Mhm. The
Or
RPG
on
Goblin.
Instagram, right? Like, just let Willow know that you love the show because it really does mean the world to these creators. Like,
You
it
are
means the world to
absolutely
me.
killing
So.
me. Thank you. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm gonna
Uh,
ramble like that. That's the type of person I am too. Is I'm a rambler. So ADHD. Woohoo! I know a lot of your guests have had ADHD.
Again, it's just it. I think it shows even more though the passion from even the people of like when like they cannot even contain themselves and always keep on track because it's like, oh, this cool thing, this cool thing, this cool thing, because these games are so awesome. And I mean, trying to segue, bunkers and badasses.
Smooth. Thank you. Thanks for bringing it back on track.
Absolutely. So I'm really curious since I've looked a little bit into the game, but I couldn't find a ton of information and I didn't want to go too far into before we started to record this. But what system does Bunkers and Badasses run off of?
Yeah, so it's a D20 system essentially, right? Like it's not using the OGL or anything like that. See, and that's where I think I fall short here is I wish I could answer that too, because I think I sort of talked to the designer about that. I was like, oh, when the OGL thing was going down, I was like, is this going to affect our podcast at all? Are we in the clear here? And he's like, no, 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 no. Like, we aren't using the OGL. We're our own thing, and like built from the ground up. So yeah, I mean, right? You've got like I should have pulled up a character sheet. Oh, you know what? I have one right
If you
here.
want to do that, go ahead.
Yeah, let me pull up an official character. Yeah, so there's 4 main stats, and then those break down into each stat has 2 checks associated with it, and I mean it just plays kind of like I don't know how to like. I don't want to say like simple, but it is fairly simple, especially compared to Dungeons and Dragons.
A bit more simplified. I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah,
What are the sets?
there's accuracy, and that will break down into insight, which is right, like kind of background knowledge.
Mhm.
And then what's the other thing it breaks down to? Oh, into interact. So your accuracy affects those two. Damage doesn't go into anything else, but determines like your damage modifier and maybe some other like checks you could do, or actually damage doesn't go into a lot, and the homebrew community has a lot to say about that. Other than like it adds damage. Speed is right. There's movement, but it's also your talk, so your charisma, as well as your traverse, right? Jumping over things. And then your
Oh, that's really
mastery.
interesting.
Yeah. Your mastery affects like how many times you can use your skills per day, out like additional times. I have such a hard time explaining that part of it. But then it also will affect like your sneakiness and your ability to search. So those are really all of the stats and the checks that are in the game.
Yeah, that's like you said, compared to D&D, that is relatively simple, kind of keeps things easy to find as well. With it seems like it keeps it's under these things, so it's like, all right, yeah, if I need to do something under accuracy, and here's the two options that I have, stuff like that. That's really cool. With Bunkers and Badasses, is it a D20 system where you add specific modifiers?
Yeah. So like you're gonna I've got my character sheet right here, actually, for a character that I played. So like if generally the rule is half. So if my big modifier, or if my big number for accuracy is 7, and then I'm going to go shoot at an enemy, then I'll roll my accuracy with a D20, and then I add 3 to it.
Oh, half's the stat. That interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool. I haven't encountered a system yet that like does the modifiers in that way. Ooh.
Yeah. Well, and part of that is there's a really, really cool thing about see, I should have laid out like how I wanted to talk about this maybe, but whatever. ADHD. I'm gonna go scatterbrained here. But like one of the really, really fun things about Bunkers and Badasses is that during combat you could do these badass moves, and so it's this moment where you describe whatever you want to do. The more ridiculous the better. Like in the game, in the book, it's telling you like, as the bunker master, tell them if it's not badass enough. Like if they don't get ridiculous enough, tell them like, and what else, like
that's
like,
so cool.
Yeah, so if they're just like, I'm gonna jump over this box and shoot them as I am in the air, and you're like, well, that's really cool, but what else? Like, oh, you know what? And I'll also throw a grenade over at this enemy over here, and I'm like, that's it. All right, bingo, and then the other players can decide to chime in, and they'll give up their turn for that round of combat, but they'll be like, you know what? I'm going to distract this enemy by doing a little dance, and it can be totally ridiculous. Like, I'm just gonna throw a bullet at an enemy and try and get their attention so that they don't see the grenade coming and try and dodge out of the way, whatever it is. And and then
so cool.
Yeah, like just get absolutely ridiculous. And then everybody's gonna roll the badass die, and on the badass die, a 1, 2, or 3 count as a nat 1, and then an 18, 19, or 20 count as a nat 20.
So it increases the like odds of success and ooh.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's very, heavy-handed there. So it could go either way, but by people pitching in, they're also going to increase the difficulty of the roll. So it might have been like a 14 to start with, but now they're like, well, I'm going to dance and distract them. It's like, well, that's not that big of a deal. All right, that's just going to add like 4 to it or whatever, 2, and then they'll roll as well, and you add all of those together. So you might end up having like a difficulty of 40 with 4 people rolling, and you're like, well, that's not that hard, like
yeah.
And so
that's a really interesting mechanic for a system. And I mean, like how you've described Borderlands with like kind of mayhem, like chaos, like there's a lot going on. The way that you're describing this, I mean, really does a good job of replicating that whole idea, and also does help kind of push that collaboration between the other players versus just kind of thinking, oh, what am I specifically going to do on my turn? If someone's going to do something cool, you can actually like help out with that. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I love it so much, and I encourage my players to actually, they can attack, right? Like, let's just combine everybody's turn into this attack. I'll give an example of one that actually happened. Was that somebody had, now I can't remember. I think they threw a grenade, and then it blew them up in the air, and then the siren, one of the sirens could phase lock an enemy, which is just like contain them in a bubble in the air. And so they held them in a bubble in the air, and another person jumped over this puddle of electrical liquid and then shot at them like in midair, and it was a big jump, and that's why I decided like, okay, that one passes. That's a good. It was a hard jump to do, and then somebody threw a grenade in the air so that as the phase lock ended, it would blow up and push them into the ground harder, right? Like something like that.
Yeah, that.
And so it's this like ridiculousness of everyone just like doing this big. It's that badass that cinematographic. What do you? Oh my gosh! Why am I spacing on words? Cinematic. There we go. Why? Cinematic action scene, right? And they killed that thing, but sometimes it doesn't. But the thing about it is that if it's pass or fail, right? So if they pass, glory, right? Like this huge thing, and they get to use the big numbers on their modifiers. So their accuracy, instead of being 3, would be +7. Their damage might be like +4 instead of +2, right? Like, so that's what happens when you successfully roll a badass move. And I think that's part of why they do like the half like that, is to make it easy to like go back and forth between those.
Yeah,
and then if
that's
you
really interesting.
Right? Yeah, like I love it. I think that's so much fun. A good way to do it. And then if you fail, then it's like everything goes to hell, right? Like you throw the grenade and it bounces off the enemy and then it lands back at your feet and deals damage to yourself. Like roll that damage, right? Like that's when you start dishing it back and they're going to take some damage and have a little egg on their face of like, oh, we tried to be so cool and it didn't work. But either way, you're rewarded with badass tokens. So if you succeed, the person who initiated the badass move gets 4 of these badass tokens. Anyone who contributed gets 2. And then if you fail, you get the initiator gets 2 and everyone else gets 1. And then those badass tokens can be used to like up rolls later. So if you rolled a 3 and you're like, oh, that's definitely not going to do it. I've saved up 10 of these badass tokens. I'll just use 10 of them right now to up that 3 so that I can talk past this guard, right? Like, so it gives you really options for later. Yeah. Or you can even add it to like damage, right? Like, oh, I'm only dealing 2 points of damage this time. Okay, well, I'm going to up it to, I'm going to put my 10 badass tokens on this one attack and now it's 12 damage. So
that's a really fun resource. I mean, like you especially like the way to get it, like it encourages being risky. And I feel like, you know, how you mentioned of how it can backfire even if you fail. I think I'd like to know kind of the expectation of the game is like it will be all mayhem. And it feels like when you do kind of commit to play this game, you understand like, oh, if you are badass, there is that chance of failure where it will come back on you. And as long as everyone's cool with that, I think that makes for incredibly interesting and cool combat situations where it can be really heavily narrative as well, which I love.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When they do badass moves, it's some of my favorite stuff. It also like, I am not a big fan of combat in general. Like I think it sometimes drags, even in Bunkers and Badasses, but those moments really help me like get excited or get back in the moment of like, everybody's doing something right now, you know, like this is really exciting. And so I think combat in Bunkers and Badasses is phenomenal, by the way. Like I love it because you really only miss if you roll a 1. And
because the modifiers are pretty cool.
Well, even without the modifiers, like if you roll a 2, there's tiers of damage. So 2 through 7, you're gonna like you have these gun cards, and so 2 through 7 on a sniper rifle. Oh, that's a bad example because that's gonna be a 0 and 0. You're not gonna hit with that, but nothing bad happens. Like I don't know why I chose a sniper rifle there. I can't remember exactly. Like a pistol might have like 2 through 7, you get like 2 hits. An 8 through 15, you get 3 hits. A 16 and up, you get 2 hits and a critical die, which is a D12.
Oh, wow.
So there's like these tiers of damage. And I think that's just so much fun. Whenever my wife and she's on the podcast, and actually we played another game when we had kind of an off week. We had to wait for something before we could like move on with our story. And so we played Fallout, which was really fun, but we missed so much. Like the combat in that, we were getting so frustrated. Like even me as like the storyteller, as the GM, I was like, oh, sweet baby Lord, come on, like give me something. Just let them hit. Like we all were getting like so frustrated with that. But the system, like it really didn't even take that much longer than a Bunkers and Badasses encounter. It just was that there was like a lot more misses and people didn't get a feel as cool as when they played Bunkers and Badasses. And same with D&D. We played D&D a couple, like last month, me and my wife with some friends, and she was like getting a little frustrated because she kept missing, and she's like, I did nothing that combat. We've been spoiled.
Yeah, I mean, I find it, I've definitely, like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite like systems is Powered by the Apocalypse. And one of the reasons for that is because it has that kind of tiered success system, sort of like Bunkers and Badass, so that you, even if you don't always, let's say, get the best hit off, something's still gonna happen, because you can get like a really good hit and advantage, you can get a good hit but you're gonna get hit back, or even if you miss, something's still going to happen, and it keeps those combats more interesting. So I definitely can understand the feeling of switching back to a system where a miss is a miss and nothing happens, and it's like interesting.
It starts to drag. I've learned to some extent, and I'm not perfect at this, but I really like the idea of it, is that adding more flavor to it, right? Like, and that it's on the GM to really like navigate that and control that. But like, if somebody's trying to stab somebody, then it's not that you miss, right? It's like, it's their armor this time. Like you go and you hit them and it just deflects right off their armor. Like you hit them at the wrong angle, or you like got them center mass and it was like, that's where the armor is strongest, right? Like, or ooh, they were so fast, they were able to duck out of the way. And so it's like, it's not necessarily about them being bad at aiming a sword, right? Like you're swinging a sword. Like it's not necessarily that you missed, it's that they dodged, it's that they parried, make it seem more cinematic.
Yeah,
make
and
it
put
exciting.
more weight on the defense as well, which is actually kind of funny because I just got done editing the second part of the Merkborg episode. That is a big conversation that we end up having in that episode, is kind of about those moments in TTRPGs of defense and like, when you miss on a roll and situations like that. So it's kind of funny that this is happening like after I got done editing. But no, I absolutely agree, like putting in that flavor, but I appreciate systems that sort of make it easier with these kind of tiers of success, or putting a little bit more structure in ways to make it a little easier on the GM's part. So I think that's really cool what Bunkers and Badasses did. Plus, I think that's an interesting mechanic as well for guns, that you get different levels of how many shots you can actually deal out, which I find really fascinating.
Yeah, well, right, it's like your accuracy. So a lot of what is it? There's a vending machine in Borderlands 2. I think it's Borderlands 2 that says like, you don't need better aim, you just need to shoot more bullets. And I think that's very much what it is. It's like, it's not even necessarily that you're firing more bullets, it's just that more of your bullets are hitting because your accuracy is higher, right? Like, because there's no ammo system in this, which some people are like, like some people love it, some people hate it, but I think it's great in a lot of ways. It's nice not to have to worry about that. I know in Fallout it was kind of interesting how they did their ammo, and I liked a lot of aspects to it, and I was like, well, maybe I'll homebrew something into this, but play with that later, right? Like, but it's just when they miss, it's actually a reload. So if you roll a nat 1, or a modifier makes you drop it down to a 1, or the speed modifier of the enemy, whatever it is, they technically just have to reload their gun. Like that's what it is. But then it gives the Bunker Master a mayhem token. And these mayhem tokens are for the Bunker Master to cause mayhem in their world. So they can use them in a bunch of different ways. I could spend mayhem to give to generate another wave of enemies. I could spend mayhem to give a dying enemy a final mayhem attack. So like I've done that before where I was like, oh boy, they sure did kill this thing easy. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to spend this mayhem and it's going to do this big final attack. And it ended up killing 2 of them. And so I was like, yay, you know, like I got to do this epic thing. And and then what else was there? Oh, they have mayhem action. So like every enemy generally has like 2 type of attacks. So like they might just be shooting or throwing daggers, and then another one might be like throwing a grenade or something like that. And then there's mayhem actions that I have to spend mayhem points to mayhem tokens to get, or mayhem, they're called mayhem points. I wrote it down wrong. And so I'll spend this mayhem point, and now all of a sudden, like instead of throwing a dagger, they're going to be throwing an axe and it'll do more damage. Or they might be able to like generate some big shield around them and their allies, or heal each other, or something like that. Like it's just,
really
it's
cool.
a more intense thing. Yeah. There's also like a random mayhem thing. Like I could have my players roll a random, like a percentile die, and it would just have some random weird thing. And it could be anything from like a big skag, which is this giant, like tough dog, carapace dog, just comes in and starts attacking people. Or it might be like a meteor from above comes and it hits everything within this area of effect. They're just so random. Sometimes they're even good, you know, like it's, I really love that idea of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Which actually makes me curious. What kinds of stories is Bunkers and Badasses best at telling?
Fun ones. In the game, so like in the book, it is written. So if you've played the games, there's a character called Tiny Tina, and she's the one that runs the assault on Dragonkeep. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, right? Like that is her. She's the BM of the game, so she's narrating throughout that, and she'll do ridiculous things. And in the game, you might be like coming up to a forest and like, oh, she's saying it's a pretty forest, and then the player might say something like, oh, why is everything so pretty here? And she's like, well, you're wrong. Okay, you know what? It's mushrooms. It's giant mushrooms. And then it'll like sprout up mushrooms, and the scenery changes around you. And she'll do like ridiculous things and talk about badonkadonks, right? Like, whatever it is. And so in the book, the way that it's written, this is the funniest source book I have ever seen. The writer of Borderlands 2 was Anthony Birch, and he is the dungeon master, or the daddy master, in Dungeons and Daddies.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, so really funny guy. I love him. I just admire him so much. But he wrote for this source book too, and you totally see that humor throughout. You'll be reading, and it'll be like there'll just be this like pink marker. Sometimes an entire paragraph might be like scratched out. You could still technically read it, but then like Tiny Tina has written in there something else. Like right here, I'm even looking at something like actions on their turn. When a player holds actions, they're waiting for something to happen. And then she has like an arrow pointing to it, and it says, Aka being a wuss, nah, just playing with you. Something like that. Like that was just an example on this page that I'm on. But like throughout the entire book, there's those kind of things where like it's saying some name that's spelled different, and she'll cross it out and she'll be like, yo, it's Marcus. Like, it's Marcus. We all know it's Marcus, like we don't need to give some weird fantasy name to it. And so
that's so good.
Yeah, there's just that kind of humor written throughout it. Even on like, there's the tutorial. The very first setting in this is the quest for the wizard's wand. And it's such a good, like, BMs are definitely going to want to read through the rules because it doesn't cover quite everything, but it's a great way to teach new players because it'll go over combat, it'll go over badass moves, it'll go over talk checks or, making checks. When you die in the game, you just respawn. In the Borderlands universe, there's new, they call them new use, and in this one, they're called brew use. And so it goes over that, like you'll die, and then you come back and you roll a trauma, just some random trauma, and they are usually funny too. Like, here I've got
I don't
well,
know why
one of
the
them.
first one I thought was afraid of ducks.
Oh, see, like that's totally something you could do though too. Like, yeah, I've been making custom ones for our games. And I have listeners who contribute ones. So I should totally
That's so
add that.
fun.
I'm going to add that and credit you for it. So if it ever gets rolled. Well, we had one. It's one of the most it's been one of the most entertaining ones, was that it made him flirty. So he had to flirt with anybody he interacted with, otherwise he would take damage.
Oh,
And
interesting. That's actually fun though. Like, I like the fact that this game is very goofy in a way that it's also just like it can be high risk, doing the badass stuff and things like
Yeah.
that. But if you just respawn,
it's not a big deal. Yeah. You just
Yeah.
respawn and you have like some goofy thing. Some of the ones in the book will like affect stats. Like it'll be like -1 on search check for a day. I've gotten rid of most of those for our games just because I'm like, I just want like narratively funny stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like one was catch a phrase. So they had to like come up with a catchphrase then and then use it as often as they could. And like like their entire purpose was like, I want to popularize this catchphrase that I've just come up with.
That's so good.
Yeah, they're just like goofy things like that. Ones I came up with, one that I really enjoyed too was like that you come up with, or everybody pitched a mundane superpower. And so what ended up being the one that she rolled, like we had our 4 players pitch one and then she just rolled and that chose which one. And so she could hear fruit. Like, and they were pretty much just Pokemon, and they'd be like blueberry, 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 like
That's so good.
it was just silly stuff like that. Yeah, we just have, it's just a ridiculous world meant to be fun. Don't take it too seriously, right? Like it's all about like mayhem, fun, adventure, laughing, having a good time as a group.
Yeah. I mean, this seems like a great, great system and game to play for like one shots or like goofy, like mini campaigns or like for casual games, even where it's just like everyone's having a fantastic time. Like, no one's like, in some games, people are like, the whole lore and wanting to create like dramatic stories. And I feel like you can still do that, but I think the core of the game with how you've talked about it so far is just to have the most chaotic time you possibly can.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm just such a big fan, and I have been loving it for a long. Like we're over 40 episodes in.
Oh
So
wow, that's really impressive. Good job.
Yeah, we've been going for a while now, and there was another podcast that we ended up. I reached out to them because I wanted to do a crossover because they started playing Bunkers and Badasses. And so we did this fun crossover, but they only did like 20-ish episodes. And afterwards they were like, I can't see it doing like a big long campaign for this, but it was fun for this. Like this was a great, like, just like you were saying, like a short one, maybe a palate cleanser type thing between bigger ones. But for me, like, I don't know, I think that's on the storyteller, right? Like I have this big epic story that I wanted to tell, and it's set in this, this universe that they have, and I think it's working. I like people listen, I guess some people even enjoy it, but like like I think it's really fun to do big long campaigns of it too. So.
Absolutely. I think it would be really I think that would be really fun. And I think it is just the expectation within the game. Like, you're going in to, if you want to do a big story, you have to make sure that everyone's on board with going into this just goofy game that's full of, dying and respawning and chaos and all of that. And I think I think any game can work for a long story if you do it right, and if the storyteller, the GM, really wants to go that direction. So I think that's fantastic that you are able to make this bigger story that is kind of beyond just the chaos that happens.
Yeah, we're definitely running like a homebrew world, right? Like it's a lot of fun, but there's also I think people think like, well, there's no stakes then, but you definitely you definitely can make stakes higher. Like I've done no respawn zones, which isn't something in the book, but in the book, what they've done is, so those are temporary traumas when you die. But like if you die in a really traumatic way, or like maybe a boss kills you, or a really embarrassing way, whatever it is, like you could roll a permanent trauma, and these affect your character permanently. And kind of what it recommends is that like deciding on a number of permanent traumas you can have before they just don't come back, right? Like you've sustained enough trauma that it's like, oh, and now your character's dead, like, and it might be 3 traumas or something. So like, I have the honor of being, at least as far as I know, I've BM'd twice for the lead designer of this game,
That's
Ian
cool.
Moss. Yeah, and he's an awesome guy. He's come onto our show twice, played this awesome character that I love, but we've made it kind of a tradition of like killing him in some sort of way at the very beginning of the episode, and then he gets a permanent trauma. And so like the first episode that we did it in, he gained, and he lost an eye, so he has an eye patch, like, and that's what he rolled, right? Like he just, now you have an eye patch. And I was like, that is so good. Like you didn't have an eye patch like when we were planning this, and now you have this signature eye patch, and he's a winker. Like he winks even with the eye patch, and it's just glorious. Like I think even the permanent ones usually are like still really fun in some way or another, right? Like one of them is that like God Killer, right? Like the Vault Hunter blames the one that's truly responsible for their death, you. So like you, the BM, right? Like, so now the Vault Hunter has this vendetta against God and wants to kill them and take them down, right? Like there's just ridiculous things like that. I truly appreciate it. And that it's like you could decide like 5 traumas, you could decide 2 permanent traumas, whatever it is.
Adjust it to however you want.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like one of the very first things they cover in this book is like, do what you want to do, homies. Like this
Actually,
book's for
I
you.
mean, I love that. I love a book I love any game where it's like, here's all of the stuff, here's the things, here's the base rules, here's, how to run it, here's more so a sandbox, here's all of the materials you need, then do whatever you want with it, because we're not trying to tell you what story you should run. We're not trying to tell you what, and even if it has like campaign, like scenarios or one shots and stuff like that in the book that for you to run, like those are usually just to start off, or if you think those would be fun. But usually they want you to be as creative and have as much fun as you want, because it's just giving you the materials to play something really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Ian and I have had this conversation, and I've talked to him about like, does it ever bother you when people like homebrew their stuff, or be like, you know what, instead of doing it this way that you wrote it, this way that you play tested and decided would be best, I'm going to do it this way. And he's like, no, not at all. I love it. Like, it's so flattering that people would like use our system as like a jumping off point, or, like Ian's just an awesome dude so Nerdvana Games is the one that made this. Ian's the only one that I really know, but it's a pretty small team there too. And I just think they did a fantastic job with this. There are like little errors in the source book, of course, but they eventually released a PDF that you can buy from their website. I'll plug that, nerdvanagames.com. And and they like updated a couple of things, and I like that they're kind of trying to like maintain that type of thing and working on it.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, I always, anyone who's listening to any episode in general, but this one specifically, because you're listening to it right now, please, I mean, like, if you hear about a game, I always encourage that you should go and check it out, even if you don't plan on playing it, even if you don't want to buy it. I think it's at least worth, seeing what's out there, seeing what they have to say. I always like the idea of buying PDFs or, quick starts of these games just to see what they're about. I think it's always worth the, looking into it before making a judgment of, oh, maybe that game's not for me. I always think you should do that. Always find the authors, find the websites, find anything on the game and just check it out, see what's there, because it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And PDFs are so much more accessible. Like you can read
Yes.
them on the go a lot easier, and they're usually cheaper. I mean, they're almost always cheaper. I can't imagine a scenario where they're not.
Plus, they're easier to share with, especially if you're playing online. They're easier to share between your players and stuff like that, so that you can all get the information, which I think is really helpful. Though I always also promote the idea of that if someone is truly passionate about the game, they should get it themselves as well, because it's always great to support the actual developers of games because they do a really awesome job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to echo that because it really does. Like having a little bit of insight into this world of bunkers and badasses, like they got kind of a bad deal with the timing of things. So I'm pretty sure it didn't do as well as it should have. And it's constantly like I see people being like, oh, there's an RPG for that. Oh, I didn't know that was an actual thing. Like I want to check it out. Like definitely don't steal it, please. Support
Absolutely.
those people. Everyone.
But yeah, I'm curious to get a bit more into the character creation though, and how that works and sort of the steps to do it.
Absolutely. So character creation's really fun. I enjoy doing it every time. It's in the book. It is very well laid out, I would say. Mm-hmm. It walks you through it pretty well. There's like 9 steps to it or something. Actually, do you want me to just pull it up and I can kind of go through it a little?
Yeah, go through each of the steps. Like, what are the different elements? How do you get stats? How do you are there classes? Things like that.
Yeah. So, okay, a little gripe here. Okay, I'm sorry, Nerdvana Games. I'm sorry, Ian. Whoever decided to lay this book out this way. In a way, it does make sense. But the very first thing it has you do is choose your archetype, which there's 4 of, and those they're enforcer, so you're more melee focused, elemental, focused on doing like elemental damage and mastery, like your action skill. Mm-hmm. Then there's Deadeye, so you're more focused on being really deadly accurate, like increases in that type of stuff. And then Guardian, and Guardian is more of like your shields protecting, that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And all of those, they come with their stats, right? So it shows your accuracy, damage, speed, mastery. So like Enforcer is 1 accuracy, 4 damage, 2 speed, 0 mastery. And then you're going to combine that with your class. But on the archetype thing, there are also archetype feats that you get to choose. And so you don't get them that often as you level up, but every so often, every level, it does determine, like your feat determines what you gain as you level up. So like it might add to your accuracy at level 2, or it might add to your damage at level 2. Some of them might give you like an additional grenade carrying capacity or things like that. And then eventually you get more feats, and those feats are more special things. So like a Guardian can regain shields by ending their movement next to a enemy and an ally. They get their shield recharge, cool. Or like they can reduce damage to adjacent allies, things like that.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, or there's just a lot of different sort of, it's a long list on all of them. I enjoy that. I think that class should have come first though. Because that's what most people are going to be familiar with, right? Like they're the classes from Borderlands 1 and 2. So there's an assassin, berserker, commando, gunzerker, hunter, necromancer, psycho. There's 2 different sirens. So technically it's only 9 classes, but it's 10 because the sirens are like, they do different things. Siren that light walks, which is like phasing in and out of like invisibility almost. That's essentially it. And then Siren phase lock, which I described earlier, and then a soldier. And so they all have, those are going to determine like what your action skill is. An assassin will put out a decoy and people will attack that decoy. And then when you come out, you hit all critical damage.
Oh, wow.
With whatever your attack is. Yeah. A berserker uses their fists, puts away their guns and just punches things. Commando has a turret. A soldier has a turret that focuses on like kind of buffing people or helping other people out, healing and whatnot. Gunzerker can wield 2 guns. A hunter has a bird or some sort of animal companion that'll dive at people and attack them. Necromancer has a robot companion. Psycho has a buzz
Necromancer sounds cool as
axe.
hell.
Yeah, like so there's all these different action skills. I pretty much listed them all. I did list them all. I'm sorry. I don't know why I could have just
You are all
sampled them
good.
out, but those also have stats, so you're going to add that to your archetype, and then after that you have 3 more stats that you can just put in wherever you want. So that you can, you'll have a little bit of customization of like, well, I do want to be a little more damage heavy, or I want to be a good talker, real good at the talks. So I'm going to put the 3 points in that.
I think it's really interesting to like combine the classes with the archetypes, because you can kind of match, but also min-max as well a little bit, depending on like what you want to achieve. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, and that was the thing that was interesting to me. So Matt, who plays a psycho in ours, psychos are generally melee based, and so I was like, you probably want to be the enforcer, and he was like, nah, man, I want to be a Deadeye. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Like, yeah, you can be a Deadeye, go for it. And then later he ended up, we let him like respec, and he ended up going enforcer because now we have one of each type. But it was fun for him. Like, he was a little more accurate. He got these different things that didn't necessarily, like he could have min-maxed, like, right. That would be the ideal thing for him to go into the enforcer and up his melee damage. But instead he went for fun. But later he decided, like, you know what, it'd be fun to make this even more powerful. So he's already the strongest one. I don't know. He does ridiculous damage so much of the time. And that's a fun thing about the podcast, is that almost every time he shoots a gun, I have to completely re-explain how combat works, because he does not shoot guns very often because he's always using his action skill, which is great. But yeah, anyway, let's see. Oh, then there's traits. So there's 50 different traits, and you roll for them. These are great because they're going to be like sort of background type stuff, or like what your character is good at, right? So it's like you roll a percentile die. One here is haggler. Retail is for suckers. +5 on bargaining talk checks. So it'll be kind of like certain scenarios that you implement this.
Yeah. That's actually really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So like you roll one random one, and then you choose another one. And so it's that fun kind of creation. But in here too, because this is written, Tiny Tina's copy of the book or whatever, there's some that are written, and this is one of my favorite ones. Which one is it? Oh, right. So like it's almost like taped over the original one, so you can't even see what the original one was, but it just says, I hate you, Dad. Your dad said you'd never amount to anything, and you got to prove him wrong. +5 to approving authority figures wrong. And it's just, I think that's so great. Like, it's so silly. There's a Macho Man one that gives you like +5 to melee attacks if they're pro wrestling moves. Like,
that's so good.
It's just silly. Like, I love the silliness of it. Like, so many of them are, like serious, but there's probably like 7 or 8 of them that are Tiny Tina's, custom ones. It's great. So then after you choose
such a fun way to do a book. That's such a fun way.
I think it's so clever. So the book also is written from like somebody else. And I'm pretty sure it's a play on somebody, like an actual figure in like the RPG world, but I can't remember who it is or who the book is written by right now off the top of my head. But like, I think it's almost like meta and then meta again, because it's written in character. Like, I'm working at Hyperion here and writing this Bunkers and Badasses book so that people can play the game, blah, 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 blah. And then Tiny Tina's going throughout and making changes. And yeah.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. So then after that, actually, it's even less than that, really, because then there's like, just generating your stats and your mods and checking your level, like generating your health, and then badass rank, shields. Everybody starts with this 15 strength shield, or no, 20 strength shield with a recharge rate of 5. And way shields work is that if you don't take any damage for a round of combat, you'll get like a recharge rate of shields back. So if it's 5 and you don't take any damage, you get 5 shields back.
Oh, that's really fun. So what does the shields do when you do take damage? Is it just kind of like a thing like a hit point where it's like a big number that slowly depletes as you take damage? It's taking the damage instead until it runs out, or
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they're not always big. I mean, some of them are 10 shields, some are
Mhm.
20, some are 50, like uh but in the Borderlands games they have shields that are like energy shields. I think
Yeah.
in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands they described it as like a magic barrier, right? So it's just everybody has these magic barriers, and the shields you can pick up different ones and they can do different things. So like if it depletes, then it'll do a nova damage, dealing fire damage to everybody adjacent to you.
Mhm.
1d4 of fire damage. So it's like sometimes you want a little bit of a lower numbered shield if you're going to be a melee attacker, or going up against a melee attacker, and just there's like a bunch of just different silly things like that.
Yeah, I
I
like
can't
that a
remember
lot.
all the
That's so
shields.
fun.
But
I mean, it keeps it
yeah.
unique for also each character as well if they pick different things, and so just all like it gives a lot of variety, and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing is appearance. Well, appearance and name. I did skip over one thing because they're one of the really, really cool things about this. There's so many really cool things about this is the generation system. So like we talked about shields, you can roll. Shields are pretty simple. You just roll like a couple of dice, and it'll tell you what kind of shield you have.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember exactly how that one is. Anyway, but it's the same thing with grenades. There's grenade mods, so like you can roll the die and it'll tell you what type of grenade you have. It might be a homing grenade. It might be a murder grenade that breaks into smaller grenades and deals more
Oh, that's
damage.
so
It might,
cool.
yeah, like there's these silly things that are in the Borderlands universe, um, universe, and but the really big thing is the guns and the generation system for that. It is so cool. So like when you very first start out, you get I passed over this. You choose a favored weapon.
Mhm.
And so there's these different, let's see, there's pistols, SMGs, combat rifles, shotgun, sniper, rocket launcher. And you choose one of those.
Yes, this one does.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, which one's your favorite, right? Like generally classes have you choose between two different weapons based on your class. I homebrew it to just be like, nah, just take whatever you want. Like, you're your character. What do you want? Um, but then if it's a favored weapon and you're using it, then you get to add your accuracy mod and your damage mod to it. Otherwise, you just are rolling the base stat. So it's like encouraging you to use those favored weapons because they're
It's almost
favored,
like a
right?
proficiency type thing where it just
Yeah.
makes it more likely. I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And as you level up, eventually you'll add more favored weapons. But I don't think you can have every weapon as a favored weapon. So, you have to choose which one you like.
I want to be a master of all, please.
I know, right? But maybe you can. I don't know. I haven't looked actually that far into it, I guess. I haven't added them all up, but then when you very first do that, so you have your favored weapon when your character creation, and then you get that favored weapon and you get to choose a brand, and all of the brands do different things. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 different
Oh
brands.
wow. I love
No, 9. There's 9 different brands. I knew I counted.
I love the variety because I love the fact that like two people could have rifles and then they can probably work completely different and have completely different like advantages and stuff just based off of the brand and exactly what kind of rifle, all of that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's just so much fun to have that. Like these starter weapons are just pretty flat. Like you start off with this, they're usually called like crappy sniper rifle. But you choose the thing and it'll be like black powder will be your accuracy mod is +2 and your crit damage is +2. So like you get that nice little bonus. But if you took Torg, you'd have an accuracy mod of -4, making you less accuracy, but it deals splash damage, dealing half damage to any adjacent enemies to your target. Things like that.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
yeah, there's like a lot of really cool things in there that are just like, and that's just the basic thing. I thought that it could be fun for us to roll you a gun at some point.
Yes.
and do the whole like the full creation of it, because there's different rarities, there's different types of guns, there's what brand it is, all that stuff.
Well, I would absolutely love that. And I just want to say, I'm curious, this is very specific. I play a good bit of video games. My favorite gun, usually when it comes to video games, are shotguns. I just really like shotguns. Is there a shotgun within this game?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, now that makes me excited. The chance that I could get a shotgun.
Yeah. So you can definitely get 1 in 6 chance.
Perfect.
So
well, I am ready whenever you are. When you would like to lead that, because I think that would be great.
Okay, I'll just turn to that page. I bookmarked it so I'd be fast here. So let's see. First, let's roll for. I've got they have gun cards too. This is a nice thing, is that you can go on their website and you can just print out these gun cards and cut them out, and then you can like write all these stats on them.
That's so cool.
And then on your character sheet to the side of them, there's these equipment slots. So you can have 3 different guns equipped at one time. And those ones, like, you can swap between, but swapping weapons will generate mayhem, like, in combat. So you kind of have, like, your main gun and then other guns that you can switch to if you want or need, whatever it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I didn't even talk about generating mayhem during combat. Oh, my goodness. So I'm going to chime in. I'm going to add that in right here, right now. Sorry. But while I'm thinking about it. So like I talked about the mayhem tokens, and another way that the BM can get mayhem tokens is that during combat, a player can choose to do extra actions. Like they can take an extra movement or an extra attack so they can deal more damage or move farther. But when they do that, they're going to give the BM a mayhem token that they can use against them later. So there's that like, oh, should I do that? Should I not do that? And I don't think my players have figured out that they totally should do it way more often, especially like extra attacks and stuff, because the likelihood of my like being able to throw stuff at them and make it harder is not as high as they think. Like,
like sometimes, I mean, they
fine.
just need to embrace it. They just need to embrace the mayhem, truly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so you are going to roll 2d8s.
2d8s. Is this adding it together or separate?
Separate.
All right. First one is an 8.
Oh,
second
great.
one is a 6.
Well, that is literally the like best thing that you could roll, because oh, you know what? They actually changed it. This is one of the things. If I had my PDF on me, I could look at it. But they changed the way that they generate guns, because that's a favored gun and then your choice of brand. So it would be a shotgun.
Oh my God.
Which for you, right? That's your favorite. So
yes.
Let's do that. But will you roll another? Actually, just roll a d6.
All right. I thought you said a d7 for a second.
Oh wait, actually, here I can do this. I'll just go to the shotgun part of this, and then you rolled an 8, and then what was the other number?
7.
7. Okay, yeah. So you have a Hyperius shotgun. That's
Hyperius shotgun
brand. Yeah. And then roll a d4 and a d6.
D4, D6. 5 on the 6 and 4 on the d4.
Ooh, that's great. So you got a legendary.
Oh my
That's
God.
your rarity. That's perfect, because that means we're going to roll even more stuff, which is fun. So it's legendary and elemental. So there's different elements. So cool. Right? So go ahead and roll a percentile.
Oh my God. So for some reason, I don't know why this happens. It seems like every time that I am needed to roll something on this podcast, because it happened in the Morkborg episode, and I believe it happened in Electric Bastion Land, where I roll insanely good, because I got an 100 on the D100.
Wow. Very nice. Okay. I thought for sure it was going to be really bad, and I was like, I'll let you re-roll. But no, definitely not re-rolling a 100. Oh my gosh. I don't know that I've ever seen a 100 rolled.
I don't think I have either. Like, I I don't roll a lot of percentiles in general within the games that I play. So it's not a high likelihood, but I don't think I've rolled a 100 on
My
percentile
goodness.
before.
That's so great. So that determined your elemental type, which is explosive and cryo. So it'll deal half damage to adjacent enemies as well as cryo's kind of tricky in there because the first time you hit them, it slows them. And then the second time you hit them with it, it freezes them. And
That's cool.
yeah,
And
like
interesting.
I really like that. But an explosive cryo gun would be like, you could pretty much stop an entire horde of people coming at you, which is amazing. That's ridiculously cool.
This is an insane gun. I'll say this. I would have never thought of it.
Right? Yeah. And then so normally if you roll, there's common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. If you roll epic and legendary, then I think you get a prefix on them. Oh, no, prefixes are different. You get a red text. So roll another percentile.
Roll another percentile. All
yeah.
Right. Do. Roll in the thing, please. 30.
30. So you're... I'll write it down.
This gun is so cool already. I'm obsessed.
Okay. So in the video games, a lot of all legendary weapons and a couple other weapons have red text. And so it's usually some sort of reference to something pop culture related or whatever it is. And in the game, you don't really know what it does until you start shooting it. And it's like shooting swords or whatever it is, something ridiculous. It bounces off walls, yeah. Like, so in this, it has that too. And I think you can choose whether to tell people up front what it does or wait until they actually shoot it and then tell them, like, well, this is what your gun does, like that reveal.
That's fun.
So you got your breathtaking. And what it does is that the wielder of the gun can't be targeted for the first round of combat.
Oh my God.
So not bad. Yeah, that's not bad at all. There's also prefixes. So like, go ahead and roll. Let's just do this again. There's 100 prefixes, which I didn't realize before. But roll D100 again.
All right. 26.
Incandescent. So these ones, some of them are helpful and some of them are just flavor. So this one is just shines brighter when being fired. So just a fun thing, but at the same time, I guess if you're in a dungeon and it's dark or something and you start shooting it, then it's like, oh, it's glowing. Now I have light, like whatever it is, you could totally come up with a useful thing for it.
Exactly. This is so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So in the end, you have a legendary incandescent Hyperius shotgun, the explosive and cryo with the red text, you're breathtaking.
That is probably the most insane weapon that I have seen within a game, and I am completely obsessed.
It is so fun. Like one of the first things I did when I got this book was like roll up a couple of guns. Like I was just like, yep, let's just roll. Let's just see what happens. I really enjoy it. I need to do the prefixes more often actually, because there's a 100 prefixes and some of them are like great bonuses. Some of them are bad too. I think some maybe. Oh, like this one, it says can only be fired once per day, but it deals 10 times the damage. So
oh wow.
Very, very strong, but yeah, like it's just lots of fun, silly things. That's the whole theme, right? Mayhem, right? Like make it ridiculous. And I'm so glad you rolled a legendary because I don't think I've actually gotten to had anyone roll a legendary in our games. And so it was fun to actually do like the red text and the prefix, which I never do. So now I know I need to do more prefixes because you can do that on any gun.
Yeah, I think that's super fun. And I love the fact that there are like those little flavor things in there. Like you can get something really useful, but there is flavor because I think people sometimes take flavor for granted because if a weapon, exactly what you said, like sure, a weapon glowing brighter when you're firing it is, maybe not the most exciting thing, but there can be actual uses for that if you think creatively. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what could, like, maybe something sensitive to light even, and you can like maneuver yourself so that your weapon, you can like fire your weapon and put yourself at an advantage for it. I don't know. Like there's wildly different things that you can do, and I just think that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, combine that with a badass move, and maybe it's like this thing just gets brighter than brighter the more I shoot it. So I'm in this dungeon fighting these ghouls, and I'm just gonna shoot it up in the air a bunch and just make it so that it's essentially like a flashbang, right? Like these things
Yeah.
have not been exposed to light in their entire life, and now they're about to get the most light, more light than they can handle, right? Like get
So yeah.
ridiculous.
I
Yeah.
think that's so cool. Oh, that's amazing. I love that a lot. That is so very cool. Man.
Yeah. So, and that didn't take very long. And, we did 2 more steps than you normally do, or maybe even 3, because not every gun is elemental. Like the
Mhm.
chart tells you whether it's elemental. And I'm sure that my friends listening to this that in the homebrew community would be like, well, technically you did the wrong chart, but you guys, it's okay. I just had the physical book on my hands.
Just having fun here. Just
Yeah. I'm giving
No,
crap to the homebrew
absolutely.
community, but they're actually really awesome. They're so much fun. I love those folks. So
That's amazing. Well, I'm actually really curious. So, when it does come to the game itself, how are the resources for the players and the BM?
uh, let's see. What do you mean resources exactly? Sorry.
Actually, again, this is with different experiences and stuff. So when I specifically with, again, Monster of the Week is going to just be my go-to with a lot of things. Monster of the Week is powered by the Apocalypse. With the actual website, they give resources for actually playing the game. So there is a hunter sheet, which is the players, where it describes every single like kind of move that you can do, gives the basic, like very easy to reference, quick information for the game, and it does the same exact thing for the keeper, who's the GM of the game, and it gives you just all these, like on 2 pieces of paper, it gives you all this information that you don't have to actually flip open the book and look for the specific things. You can just reference these sheets of paper. So it's like these resources that makes playing the game just a little easier and can help with new players, and even quick references of like, oh, what does this exactly do without having to open the entire book.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wasn't sure if you were talking about like resources too, like gold, like
Yeah.
resources in the game. So I'm glad
How much gold's in the game and silver and all of that important elements.
yeah, because that I was legit gonna. I was about to answer that, like it's just gold and badass tokens and mayhem tokens, like that's all there is to it. And then I realized, like, wait, she might be talking about other things. My bad.
All good.
No, yeah. So I think that could be better. There's really not like too much to do, but I ordered the deluxe edition, and it comes with all the fixins, right? Like it's got miniatures. I painted all the miniatures because I love painting minis, and it's got a dry erase board. It's got actual gun cards that you can use and just draw from that deck. It has a giant purple badass die that has bombs for the ones and vault symbols for the 20s.
That's so cool.
The whole reason I brought that up was because it comes with a BM screen, and I love talking about the BM screen because it's like, oh yeah, you can set up your BM screen, and then you can be hiding behind your BM screen while you BM in front of your friends. Like it's just such an immature thing to talk about BMing behind a BM screen in front of your friends. Which, by the way, I don't know if Phil just doesn't know. Phil is in the UK, but I was talking about BMing, and he was like, "What are you talking? Why is everyone laughing?" And I was like, "Do you not know what BM is? Like, it's very immature." Like he was like, "No." I was like, "Bowel movement, man." He's like, "We don't that over here. So, anyways, side thing. Anyway, the actual BM screen is super duper nice. I love this thing. I wish they would do like a printout version of it for people, just because it's got so many things in there. There's like the different potions, enemy drops. There's a couple different like rolling tables. It has the whole gun generation there, other than prefixes and red texts. That's what it's called. But then it has the encounter order, and it runs you through combat, which is really nice. Has the conditions of elementals. It's so nice because generating loot is a big part of the system. And everything that you need to generate loot, for the most part, is on there, like generating your grenades, your shields, all that stuff, which is great for that. But I wish that they would do something like an official, like a player Vault Hunter reference sheet, so that they knew exactly what they could do in combat. In the homebrew community, a lot of people have done some. I've done some for my players, just so that there's really not even that much they need to know, but there's certain things that I always answer, because they just don't come up that often, or people forget everything that they can do in combat. Because in combat, it's not like you have one action. You have all of these things that you can do. You can move, shoot, drink a potion, throw a grenade, and I'm sure I'm forgetting one off the top of my head. Like, you can do all of those things on your turn, and or you can activate your action skill and just do your action skill. And then there's ones that give mayhem points. So then there's the extra movement and extra attack, and those give me mayhem points, but you can choose to do those, And so a lot of times people's first thought is I can probably move and attack, and that's it. Or I can move and throw a grenade. And it's well, you can also still attack, and people don't really utilize that. But I think having a reference sheet for them would help a lot. That's one thing I wish they had. But I mean, online they do have the gun cards that you can print out. That pretty nice to just write everything on. I have yours right here written on. I wrote everything down as we went. Yes. There's the character sheets. There's also pre-made characters. So you can just go on there and print out a pre-generated character, and it has all the stats. Oh, I didn't even talk about this. Skill trees. Every class has a skill tree, just like in the video games.
Amazing.
Yeah. So they're 5 tiers, I think. And you have to unlock 3. You have to put skill points into 3 things, and then it'll unlock the next tier. And then after you've put 6 skill points total, it'll unlock the next tier. And then 9, you don't have to, you could just stay in tier 1. You could put 6 points into tier 1 and it'll unlock tier 3. But it's great. I've really liked that system, especially where they have the printout. You can go and print those skill trees out on their website. And actually, do they? I don't know if they made that public or if that was a private thing. Ooh, oh no.
Great question.
I should have checked, but yeah, they have those, and those are really, really nice, because then you just do a check mark next to what skill you've unlocked. And
that's really fun.
Yeah, it just keeps track of it. It tells you what your action skill is at the top. And
is that how you level up, or is that a...
Yeah, so when you level up, I'm a fan of milestone. I don't like tracking XP. That's,
You're fine. I same.
Right? Yeah.
It's so much easier.
Yeah. I think in a game like this, sometimes I know that the other people, the Roleplay Rejects, they did the Bunkers and Badasses run. Their BM kept throwing enemies at them, trying to get them to die a little bit more. And they just kept killing them. And so then that made them level up even faster than she wanted them to level up. And I was right. But you could just prevent that with milestone, right? Just put it at certain story beats or whatever. So anyways, but when they level up, they get, that's one of the things. Every level they get an increase to their HP, and then they get a skill point that they can put on their skill tree. And it's great. There's a lot of different things. They can put up most of the skills. They can do up to 3 skill points per skill. And so if you did, You know what? Is it okay if I pull one up?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Also, I have to let Richard out. He decided that it was no longer time to sleep under the desk.
Oh, it's time.
Yeah, I mean, he's been napping like all day. He's got to get around a little bit and then take another nap. So like, it's the routine.
I totally get it.
I really do want to get this game though now. Like just even to run as one shots, I feel like it would be so fun, or like little, like I said, little mini campaigns, because I don't want to commit to more full blown campaigns, but just to run it for like small things. Hell yeah. Sounds so fun.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think it would be perfect for that type of thing. For people who are definitely obsessed with the game series, I think it's definitely like I know that a lot of people are running more like, big campaigns and stuff, which is cool. So like here I've pulled up one. Oh, there's actually 6 tiers, because there's 5 tiers, and then the very final one is usually some like super strong special skill.
Of course.
I forget that. The capstone.
You're badass as hell at that point. So
exactly, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I pulled this one up. So this is the psycho. So this, they're a psycho, right? Like they're psychotic. So their very first, they have 4 options on tier 1, and the very first one is when performing a melee attack, roll 1d20 plus your MST mod. On a 12 or over, become inflamed for 2 turns, dealing and taking 1d6 per skill level incendiary damage while attacking. So they can light themselves on fire, and they're going to deal an additional d6 per skill level, so up to 3d6 of fire damage to enemies that they attack. But they're also going to take that d6 damage too.
Damn, that's actually really cool. It's almost like that. It is that, like, I mean, yeah, psycho mode. Like you just go full just full blown absolute, like, there's like something specific
rampage.
That I'm thinking. Yeah, rampage. Like you go fully into something, like no matter your own personal well-being, no matter any of that, you just go full blown insane.
Oh yeah, like a psychosis type thing.
Even with it's almost, I know it's not exactly how it works in D&D, but it's a kind of idea with rage that would be really interesting. Is, the whole idea with rage is that with a barbarian is like you go into this rage mode. You go angry, whatever, to deal all like so much more damage, but it leaves you vulnerable. So it's almost, I like that idea a bit more of like, you get super powerful and you can do all of this, but you are actively harming yourself or putting yourself in more danger and making yourself more vulnerable in return for this awesome reward. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And Matt ended up actually getting rid of it because it's interesting. He rolled under a lot of the time. He very rarely actually lit himself on fire for how often he actually melee attacks. But then on that other podcast, he would light himself on fire all the time. Like it was rare that he didn't. Mm-hmm. So it was one of those things where he was like, you know what? I don't want that one anymore.
I think that is completely fair. But I mean, even then though, it's interesting. Just I always love the idea of letting players be able to adjust choices later on, depending on how they're going to play, especially if it's a new system and you don't really know a ton about it yet. I think it's great to give them the option. When I first ran my Monster of the Week game, I had all my players make their characters, make their choices of what moves they wanted, all of that, what they wanted for their character. I'm like, all right, we are going to play through this first arc. If at any point you want to switch something out, let me know. Because, this is a game that all of us are unfamiliar with. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't know how your play style is going to come through. So I love giving them the freedom of, you're not stuck in. You are not stuck in just a choice that you made before you decided, oh, this is actually how I want to play the game. So I appreciate that a lot.
I agree 100%. So when I first started, well, technically, all right, I ran the one shot, the intro mission, because they had sent us a PDF. People who had pre-ordered it got a PDF while they were waiting at some point. And
That's
I was like, oh, I'd love to record it and then test out how it is to like edit a full actual play type thing, right? And so Phil was there and Matt was there too. But Phil's character, he wanted to continue on. Matt wanted to make a completely new character, but Phil didn't want to stay an assassin, so he made a new character. He kept his character, and we just changed the class. And I was like, that's perfect. Like, of course, like if you and I support any of my characters. If any of my characters are ever like, I don't want to be a psycho anymore, like I want to be a gunzerker, then probably what I would do is be like, next death, like we're gonna have you die here, like, and then your trauma will be that you're a new class, like you come back and you're now a
fun way to deal
gunzerker,
with
right?
that.
Like,
Ooh.
yeah. So that's kind of how I've decided I'll handle it. If they do that, it'll just be like a death thing. And when you die, there's also the consequence of like you do lose 10% of your gold. But gold really isn't like all that important, honestly. Like just like in the video games, gold isn't gold or money in whichever series you're playing. It's like, yeah, it's nice to have for certain things, but not that needed.
And especially with what it seems like when you defeat enemies and stuff, you usually get loot and things like that. Doesn't
Yeah.
feel like you have to buy a ton of stuff, except I guess bullets if you had to track them, but you don't. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've thought about homebrewing that type of thing of like maybe you just like have maybe it's clips instead of bullets, and so it's like every time you have to reload, get rid of a clip. There's so many and we do a bit of homebrewing in our game for sure, quite a bit. I have I have 2 custom classes in my game, like that I've just
that's
homebrewed.
awesome.
Yeah, and again, it's based on a video game series. So like one of my player likes mechs, and so the third game has a mech, and there's not a mech in the first 2 games, so it's not out yet. At least, maybe they're working on it. I don't know. And so I just built him one. Like I pulled up the skill tree and everything on Borderlands 3 and just looked through and thought like, oh, what would translate good? Oh, how would that translate into here? And I just built this skill tree based on that.
How easy do you find like adding in that homebrew? I am curious.
It's been pretty easy, and I definitely make adjustments, right? Like as we're playing, I'll be like, oof, that's weak, or oh wow, that hit like a truck. Okay, we're gonna change that, like. But overall, it's been fairly easy to homebrew. Yeah, like
It's fantastic.
it's been nice. Then my wife's character I made complete pretty much from scratch. I was kind of combining 2 classes, so I took some from each one, but then I also had completely original things that I was like, I'm just going to try this type of thing. And her action skill is something original, and
That's so cool.
so I just like I was just having fun with making that character and for her, that class for her. And a lot of people like, so there is a awesome homebrew community. They're on Reddit and a Discord. I'm on the Discord. I try to keep up with the Reddit, but it's not as active as the Discord. And so like DM by necessity is on Reddit, and they and their name is Scout in the Discord, but they've done DLC for it, and all of their DLC. Yeah, like I love that they did it that way. So, keeping with the video game theme, but they have done every class from all of the games, which is great. Like I think I've had 2 or 3 people play one of their classes when they came on our podcast as guests. And then they have like just a bunch of other stuff like melee weapons, which I've been homebrewing melee weapons and kind of playing with different things. And again, I'm actually reworking it again because I'm like, all right, the one I have now, it works, but it's actually slightly complicated. And now I think now that we've run it a little bit, I know how to like simplify it, right? Like keep it simple,
Absolutely.
stupid,
Yeah.
And so, but like they have this whole, like homebrew stuff. And if you want to play it in like the space setting, not in the fantasy setting, if you want to play it like Borderlands instead of Wonderlands, then you can do it like that. Like they've made space travel and vehicles, way to operate vehicles, hijacking vehicles, like like all this, just so much stuff. It is insane how much custom content they alone have made, as well as so many other amazing folks like on Reddit. somebody made a generator. So like, we had you roll all of those stats, but you can just go to this website that they've done, app, I don't know what you call it, and you just click a button and it'll generate it for you.
That's great. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love
So like
community resources. It's so
right?
cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's, favorite part usually about like learning about these games is when I do hear about the stuff that just the community does and, how strong usually these communities are and how much they love these games that they just put so much work and effort into. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. It blows me away. Like I was working on a bunch of custom stuff and then I joined that and I was like, wow, I could have saved so much time not doing that if I found this earlier. But it didn't matter to me either. Like, I still wanted to do that. And there's times where I see Scout stuff and I think like, wow, they did an amazing job with that, but I would do it differently and I'm going to do it differently.
Mhm.
And we always talk about that. Like when a new person comes in, they're like, oh, well, I see that somebody's already made a custom thing for the gunner, and everybody is just like, let's see your take on it, right? Like it's everybody's so supportive in this community, and I feel bad because like somebody in there had said like, I'm so grateful for everybody in here because you treat my stuff like it's something of value, where in other communities I've been in, they kind of just treat it as like, oh, cool, like,
yeah,
somebody's making custom content, that's cute, like.
Aww.
But but I think they're awesome. Like just a huge shout out to Scout who runs all of that stuff. Like even the official Nerdvana folks are in that Discord, and Ian will occasionally respond to questions, and they're also just really helpful at like answering questions. The other day, or a couple months ago, my character had like rolled a nat 20, and I thought that meant that they got a did double damage, but really they just add a critical hit, and they were rolling elemental, which is double damage against that certain type of enemy they were against. So I was like, is it triple damage? Is it like, do I double the double? Like, so which is essentially quadruple damage? And they were like, first of all, you messed up your crits. And I was like, son of a gun, I am 20 episodes into this show and I have messed that up like 4 or 5 times, and I will mess it up a couple of more times while I adjust back to it. Like, and so they're just like, but they're nice. They were very nice about it, and like, answering it, and then like that spawns more conversation. It's such an awesome community. So you can look up Bunkers and Badasses on Discord, not Discord, Reddit, and then there's a link to the Discord too.
That is fantastic. And I mean, anyone who's listening to this, if you are interested in this game, first of all, get it. Second of all, yeah, check out the Discord, check out the Reddit, whichever one you're more comfortable with, whatever you want to, where you want to be. I think that, again, always amazing that there are those resources. So 100% check that out. But I think, there's a few more things that I would like to cover and ask. And one of them is, so do you have any advice for people who are wanting to run Bunkers and Badasses for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. Because it would be weird if I just said no, right? I'm just like, no, I don't. No advice.
I have nothing to share. My knowledge is only mine.
Yeah, exactly. I am a hoarder of knowledge, and I do not share it. Only collect it. I think, well, it's going to be. I don't know anybody that has struggled through this source book. It is really fun. Join the Discord, ask questions there, because there are a couple of things that might be a little bit confusing. And even if you don't have the source book, you can still come to the Discord, and we have had plenty of people do that and be like, oh, I'm curious about this. Well, but I'm hesitant because of this aspect, or how does it deal with this type of thing? So it's just a great community there. That's going to be one big thing. There's also a bunch of community resources that you can find there. Like if you want to run it through Roll20 or Foundry, there's people have put that together, which was really nice. I imagine for Nirvana to be like, well, we don't have to do that now. Like the community did it awesome. And then, yeah, I would start with the quest for the wizard's wand, like, help everybody make their characters, listen to the collaborative character creation from this podcast and implement that. And then just start on that. And you don't need to necessarily teach them everything up front. That quest for the wizard's wand will help teach a lot of those things. One thing it doesn't necessarily teach is shield regeneration. So just kind of know that beforehand. But like as the BM, like try and study some of that. But there's also like areas in there too that'll be like, hey, here's a little info for the BM here, just so you know.
Perfect.
This is how this works. So it's just great. It's very approachable. And I think that's one of the things that was one of their goals with it, right? Is because they're making a video game IP and turning it into a TTRPG. So it can't be overly complicated because they want to make it approachable for people. They don't want people to get the game and be like, wow, this is so confusing.
Crunchiest thing in existence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot in the homebrew. It's just like, sometimes I wish it was more crunchy, and it's just like, well, but that's not very approachable. Like, we can all homebrew it to be crunchy. Like, we can make certain things. We can add ammo if we want, or clips, or however you want to do it. Like, we can all adjust and make that ourselves. So, but yeah, it's a very approachable game. I think I think even if you're brand new to RPGs and have never tried one, if you've never even tried to like lead a game, this is a great one to either, BM for or to play as a player. I've gotten to play as a player, maybe like 3 times. And it's a blast, but I guess I'm an almost forever BM.
Sometimes that's just the role you take. But yeah. No, that is seriously awesome. And actually that reminds me because you mentioned there is the, kind of starter adventure. Do they have other pre-written scenarios as well within the book?
Yeah, and they kind of just roll into each other almost so there's that. I'm so glad you asked that. So there's the quest for the wizard's wands. That's like your tutorial, right? It's like when you're playing a video game and it's like, move the right stick to look up and down, and then you do it, right? Like,
here's how to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. So that is wonderful for it. And then after that, it goes into the assault on Dragonkeep, which is what this whole thing is pretty much made from, is that Borderlands 2 DLC. And there are some changes, I've heard. I haven't actually played through the whole thing or read through the whole thing even. But they do make little changes, so it's not like directly 1-in-1.
Yeah. From
the video game. And then the last thing. Yeah. So after you finish that, they have I'm so happy about this because it's Honey Heist, but it's not honey, it's honey. It's HUNNY. And that one is entirely written by Tiny Tina. It's her, her modular, it's her one-shot type of thing. And it looks pretty sizable, which is awesome. It's I haven't run it. I've read through it a little bit and I'm like, it's funny, it's cool, the art in it is great. I just like one day I will run through this. But there's a part of me that wants to run through as a player first, so I might have to find somebody in the homebrew or something. Yeah, just to like experience it as a player. Yeah. Then there was
amazing.
There was also in the deluxe edition of Tiny Tina's, or the collector's edition of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, it came with the treasure trove or whatever it was, and in there it came with a book that was, oh no, now I can't remember what the real name is called. Ian told me that it was called Cyberhunks for a little while. I hope he's okay with me saying that. And like, so now I can never remember what the real name is. Oh, it's something about like Welcome to Neogun City.
That's
something like
cool.
that. Yeah, and so it's like, it's kind of a like cyberpunk. It's like a cyberpunk one-shot type of thing.
That's so fun. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but that one's not as available, like, sadly, for people. I got it, but I wish that they would just sell it by itself as a PDF or something for folks.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And I mean, in your opinion, how approachable and good are these like pre-written scenarios? Because I think they can, I mean, personally, from my experience of Dungeons and Dragons, I'm sorry if anyone else feels differently. I don't like the pre-written stuff in Dungeons and Dragons. I don't like the like official. I don't like the pre-written campaigns. So I'm always curious about how pre-written scenarios work in other games and how good they are.
Yeah, I think they're great. I really do. I've had no, I'm not talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm talking about the B&B one.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Bunkers and Badasses stuff in the book so far that I've played through Wizard's Wand maybe 3 or 4 times, and I every time I think it's really entertaining. There's a lot of like fun and humor in it, and different people will do different things, right? Like so, and even like I had somebody who just ran it enough or was like, I'm just gonna add this like poker game in there, and I was like, that is genius. That was like a really fun thing for the players to do.
That's so cool. I
And
love that.
but that was something, like somebody had added. But even without that, like there's just a lot of really entertaining things in it. And even if you've played the video game, then running through Assault on Dragonkeep, there are like differences that will add like some fun flair that like even if you're familiar with the story of it, there'll be some unexpected things. So yeah, I've been very impressed with it.
That's amazing. I love that so much.
I like it more than the D&D stuff that I've done.
Yeah, because I think it's important because I think pre-written scenarios are extremely valuable. I mean, just with the, finding the wand, that's an introduction. That's supposed to get you started and help you learn the game and all of that. They are so, so very important. So I'm always curious to hear from people who have actually run different games with pre-written scenarios because, again, they're important resources. I mean, when I think I've probably said this on the podcast before, but when I ran my first D&D game, I went to do a campaign book because it's like, oh, that's supposed to be the easier option. But as soon as I started to flip through them, I'm like, there's some interesting ideas. I'm just going to homebrew. And in my opinion, I think that has been a lot easier than trying to run anything pre-written. So
yeah. Oh, I agree. I got the starter set for what was it? Well, Dragons of Ice Spire, something like that, right?
Ice. What is it? Ice. I mean, I know there's like an Ice Dale something or Ice. No, Ice Spire. You might.
Yeah,
it's something like that. Yeah. Along those lines.
Yeah, something to that effect. And it's like, holy moly! Like I did run it. I've run it. Well, I haven't run through the whole thing, but I've done a couple sessions 2 different times with 2 different groups. And it's like, it's fine, but it is there's so much in there that like, I think doesn't need to be in there. There was a couple of things that were super confusing that like you reread it several times and you're like, am I missing something or is it missing something? Like, and that's an official starter kit. And I feel bad saying that, but like it didn't feel complete. It felt like it was missing stuff. So yeah, like, but it was nice too to have for like, learning for me at least. But yeah, like with this book, I think it's been great. Like the scenario is just, it's fun. Yeah. Like people enjoy it. Every time, actually once, the second time I ran it, I was so nervous because I was running it for my brother, my brother is like a huge TTRPG fan, plays so many, he's like making his own system, all this stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so then he had his friends over who've been playing games for like 20 years. And we were talking about like, oh, what are your favorites? And he's like, Call of Cthulhu. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to try that one. I'm so excited. He like went off and was telling me all these things that he loved about it. And I was like, yes, I'm so excited. And then we finished the session and I was like, well, thanks guys. Like, I'm still fairly new to GMing games and all this. And they were like, this this might be my favorite. This might be my new favorite. I loved this so much. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, whoa,
That's so sweet. Oh,
yeah, that was crazy. Okay, cool. Like, and they're like, just for different reasons. Like, it's just fun. Like, the whole point of it is just to have fun. Like, you can definitely, for me, I love the like story aspects more than like combat, but combat can be really entertaining. And the, like the role play stuff can be really entertaining because you can be these like outlandish, goofy characters. It's everything fits. And you can metagame too, like, and you can make the metagaming part of the like role playing to an extent.
Yeah, that's so cool. Again, it's just I think the most important thing when like looking at TTRPGs is like every single one does something different. You can't find one that does everything and that's going to give you always, widely different experiences because a lot of them are just made for something so specific. And this is just mayhem and goofy and have a great time, please.
Yeah, right? It's just
so good.
I mean, that's the point of games. I was just listening to your Souls episode earlier today, and they were talking about, like, oh, if people who play the game, it's like some people will say, oh, if you didn't play it with no armor and only using your fists, then like you're not a real gamer type thing. And it's like, nah, that's not how it is. Like, what's not a real gamer is gatekeeping, like,
exactly. Yeah, everyone's gonna enjoy games differently, and I think that's why learning your own play style and what you enjoy within games is so very important, because then, I think what I do enjoy as well with having this podcast as a resource is you can listen to something like this or start looking for other games and hear about the play experience and what it's intended for, and what kind of stories it does tell, that then you can see if that matches with your style, because that is so much more fun than trying to fit yourself into a game just because it's popular or whatever and not have fun with it because it doesn't fit the type of game style that you like.
Exactly. You're saving so many people so much time, but also probably costing people money too by talking up some really cool sounding systems. So, it's a double-edged sword listening to this podcast.
It truly is. It's a double-edged sword running it, because I'm right now on the website for the Bunkers and Badasses like, how much is the PDF?
I'll tell you what, if you want, you can come in. You can come and join a session of ours, and you can be on our podcast as a guest. If you'd like.
Would be
no
awesome.
pressure.
Yeah.
You and I, we can meet up sometime, and we can make a character, and then we'll get you in the game. I do
my legendary shot.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm totally gonna save this, and you can keep it and totally use it. That would be epic.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, legendary even.
I know. Legendary. In our games, I do flashback episodes, so we'll flash back, and like it'll be when we can't do a normal session or outside of a normal session. Like we record on Sundays, and somebody might be like, oh, like I'm not doing anything this week. And I'm like, let's record a flashback. And so I'll just meet with them and then have a guest on. And so we've had a couple of guests on. It's been really, really fun to do. I love those episodes, but it's also fun because then like I get to introduce somebody to the game as well.
Yes, that would be amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's pretty much, like we're taking Good Boy back to level 1, right? Like, so he's just as weak as you're going to be at level 1. We don't have to like power you up to level 5 or whatever.
Yeah, it's always better to start at level 1. Much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think about that. Like, people were talking about running this. You go up to level 30, and they're running some test sessions at 30 and seeing what they can do. And they were talking about doing like hundreds of damage. And then they were like, and it was like 2 or 3 turns later. And all of a sudden I realized I completely forgot about this other thing I could do because we just leveled up to level 30, and I forgot some of the skills I had, And I was like, man, that is insane. Like, I feel like they were doing like I don't remember what the biggest number they did, but I feel like it was like 400 or something.
That's
Yeah.
insanity.
Where
That's
most
so
of the
cool.
yeah, like most of the time you're definitely not rolling that high. Like like a sniper is one of the stronger guns, and you're rolling a D10 with that. A rocket launcher is a D12, so like, and the rocket launcher is the strongest guns. Well, it's, whatever. It's explosive, right? You would think of the rocket launcher, the high damage. So,
yes,
like,
yes.
yeah, like, so doing 12 points of damage on one turn is a decent amount at the beginning.
And apparently you go all the way up to hundreds and still.
I know. I
so
can't even
cool.
fathom it. I think we're at level 5 or I think we might be level 6, about to level up to level 7 in our game. I pace it pretty slow. We're 40 sessions in. Maybe they should be higher than that, but like I just want to keep that pacing right.
I mean, whatever works for the game and the story. But so I think there's one more thing that I would like to ask. But first, is there anything else that has not come up that you would like to cover about the game?
Oh, let me look at my notes here, because I think that either I brought everything up or that you brought everything up. So I don't think so. I on here I have written about the I did the gun cards. One of the things that I really enjoy with combat or the mayhem points is you can, as the BM, also just use them how you want to. So I thought that just reloading on a nat 1 was kind of boring. Like it gave me a mayhem point, but I'm getting plenty of mayhem points. They roll nat 1s, they give me a mayhem point. Which one of our characters is guaranteed to roll a nat 1 at least once to 5 times a session? Like the most ridiculous nat 1 roller you've ever seen. Love it. And so there's all these other ways I get mayhem tokens. So whenever they roll a nat 1, I just spend a mayhem token, and then I usually do some sort of damage, like make it ricochet and bounce back and hit them. So I think it's just a silly, fun thing to do.
A little something happen. Yeah.
Yeah, like I love that I'm a board gamer. I came from board gaming, more so, and so and Ian is a board game designer. So I think there's a lot of those kind of board game aspects of like with the mayhem tokens. It felt very like board gamey to have like the BM not be. I'm not an almighty god. I have these rules. I have these tokens. If I don't have enough tokens, then I can't do these actions, right? Like, so I feel like there's some checks and balances there. And I also love, because earlier I think I mentioned this and I didn't. It was before we brought up that you respawn in trauma, but I was like, I got to kill 2 of my players, which doesn't happen all that often. But like,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's fun that like I'm able to kill the characters and celebrate it. Whereas in other games, like when I played D&D the other day when we were playing, one of the characters almost died, and I was like biting my nails, just like, oh no, like I do not want them to die, but like I have no control over these rolls or anything, right? Like I'm trying to be fair here, but here it's just like I get to actually celebrate. I'd be like, yes, I killed you. Oh, like eat it. Now it's going to do something narratively funny because you have to flirt with people, like and they can laugh about it too. Like they don't necessarily, they're like, oh, dang it, I can't believe I died. But then they roll it and they're just like, cool. Yeah, that's fun. Like now dying is a fun thing.
Yeah, I love that so much. I think that is a fantastic element because I get like I don't want to kill you, I don't want to kill you, I don't want to kill you, I don't want to kill you.
Yeah,
Your
exactly. I'm gonna confess here. 2 times. No, yeah, 2 times I technically pulled my punch because I hadn't adjusted to them being able to die. And I regret doing that, of course, and I've learned since then, but it was like narratively, right? We're doing a podcast. So like in my head, I was like, well, I can't have them die like that. Dang it. Like I can't, that's not a good death or whatever. Or like this enemy has like 1 health left. Like they're going to make it to the end of the combat. And there's a whole nother like thing after that. And I don't want them to miss out on that. And now I've learned since then, like, don't do that. Like, just let them die. kill them. Like, it's fun, it's funny, and it's in a normal game I would not do that, and I would not do that anymore. But like, just for that for the podcast, it was like, I can't kill a character, and yeah.
It was
an
a younger
interesting
version
hurdle.
of you who didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you know what? Okay, this was the first time, and it was a narrative reason actually that I did it. So in my game, I had planned to set up like the respawn. The Brew U is like a magic coin that they get from Friend Info Adventure Co., which is the company that's going to hire them eventually, right? Like, but they weren't working for them yet, and they didn't have these coins yet. So like, if they died was my thought. And they were setting up some traps. They were doing a whole Home Alone shtick in a warehouse and we're gonna have these robots come and a bucket would fall on one of their heads, right? A bucket full of water. Classic, right? Like, so great. So, good old Mercurius there. He's setting up the trap. He rolls it. He gets a nat 1. And I'm like, oh, well, that bucket falls on your head. And of course it's a nat 1. So you got to take a little damage. And I rolled a 2 and he's like, that's enough to kill me. And I was like, wait, what? For real? And I was like, I haven't set up the whole like Brew U thing yet. Oh gosh, like I don't want to do this yet. And so in the video games, they do like fight for your life when you go down. And so we just went into like fight for your life, but he still gets made fun of. That's
a really fun way to get around it.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, and then somebody else just came up and like, revived him like they do in the video games. He's like, there's no enemies around. I have a bucket on my head. Like, I can't do anything. It's just ridiculous and awesome. But again, like that's also what the game lends itself to, is those like ridiculous, funny, awesome moments. And in the source book, in the very first adventure, there are definitely puzzles where it's like, you want to go across the chasm there. And if you fail, you fall to your death and then you just respawn and now you have a new trauma. Which I think is just so great. I need to do more stuff like that in my games, honestly.
Yeah, more just like fun little scenarios that you can kill them in.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just wild. It's entertaining.
It really is. But yeah, I think honestly I think we are coming to the end here, and there's a final question that I've been implementing a bit more into more recent recordings, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but why do you love this game? And it can be sort of kind of a love letter type thing, like here's things that I enjoy, just anything like, why do you love this game? Why do you love Bunkers and Badasses?
Okay. Dearest Bunkers and Badasses, I love you tremendously. Thank you for providing me with an opportunity to get a group of friends together and have just an absolute chaotic time together. So many laughs, so many misadventures, so much murdering hoboisms. Whatever it is. I wrote this in pen. I regret that. I should have done it in pencil so I could just erase that. But I am rambling. You've come up with a clever system that encourages you to be absolutely ridiculous, not take yourself seriously, and just enjoy life. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the fun. Thanks for the gun generation, the whole system. Aces, love you. XOXO, yours truly, Sir. Slash that out. I'm not a sir. I haven't been knighted. Oh, ridiculous. Riley Stock, BM, aka Bunker Master, aka Bowel Movement. P.S. Please release more stuff. Please give us more official content. Period. That's it. The end.
That is so good. That is the best thing.
So, yeah, sealed with a kiss. I got the hot wax, put it on there, and put it against my lips,
Perfect.
Please
Oh my
send that
gosh.
off to Nerdvana.
Yeah. You
Hmm.
need to clip that. That's so good.
Very
Oh.
rambly. That is very much me, though, and uh, so how I run the games and go off on little side tangents and
I
yeah.
think it's great, but seriously,
Thanks.
oh my gosh. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and talk about bunkers and badasses because this has been absolutely fantastic. I need to see if I have the budget to buy the PDF because I think I will be because it sounds like such a blast to run and I've been running more one shots, so it's like that would be amazing. But
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. It's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. Thanks for doing the show. I mean, beyond just having me on, who, little old me, you really are doing an amazing thing here and talking about all these different systems, and the way you're running these interviews is very impressive. I have loved getting to know your guests, even though I can never remember names. That's just an ADHD thing. I need like faces and names together, or to actually like interact with them. Anyways, that's rambling again. That's just me again. But like, yeah, please keep doing the show. You are amazing at it. Thank. I can't. It feels weird to be on the show. Like after listening, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is above my level. This
No, it's
Willow is
just
amazing.
you're amazing. No, seriously, it's like honestly, and I mean, no matter how small or big the creator, I think everyone deserves a chance to talk about their favorite games and to just like have like the moment in the spotlight and be able to say, why they love them so much because there's so many reasons why people love their favorite games. There's so many reasons and I think it's so great to hear it from so many people. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, seriously, this means the world. Thank you so much. And everyone who's listening, please check out Riley at their podcast of God friend.
You
Every
got it.
time, every time that I go to say podcast names, Friend and
Mm,
Foe Adventure Co., which rhymes, which I think is great. But please
thank
go
you.
check out please go check out their podcast, Friend and Foe Adventure Co. Because I mean, after listening to this episode, you don't want to hear an actual play of it being played. Like, why wouldn't you? So, go check Riley out. There He's awesome. It's great. Just, have a great time. Listen to the actual play and see all the shenanigans that happen because I'm sure it's many just from the few stories that have been shared here.
Yeah. Yeah. I like first, when we first started, I will say there's definitely a lot of rules mess ups, hiccups, audio quality issues and whatnot. But like most people who make it past the first like 2 or 3 episodes stick with it pretty good. And if you can't, then I would like, well, obviously, if you can't, then screw you, you jerk. Just stick it out and listen to us. No, but like a few days before I started the podcast, I was listening to another podcast, and they had talked so much, like every guest that they had, one of the advice that they would give was like, don't over prep. And I had written this big epic like start to the podcast. So like 2-3 days before starting, I was like, and scrap that. Here's a side quest idea that I had, and I guess I'll just wing it. And totally winged it the first like 2 episodes and end up winging a lot of episodes. But episode, I think it's episode 16 is when I end up bringing that big story back. And that's like, so almost everything before episode 16 is like prequel stuff. It's, like it's the lead up. And there's so many amazing, funny moments, but like episode 3 is still has one of the absolute funniest shticks we've ever done. And like, we have so much fun. So
now they have to go
yeah.
listen to find out what it is.
I know. Yeah. Like I guess that's what I would say is like, give it to episode 3. Like you want to meet the characters. And then if you're like, all right, quality's bothering me, go ahead and skip ahead to like 16 and then start there and see if you like it more. So
Absolutely. But yes,
but
please Please go check it out because, I mean, again, supporting creators, supporting podcasters really means the world to us. It's really helpful. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't even say the amount of times that I've gone to my mom and I'm like, I've gotten this many listens today and like all of that. So 100% recommend. Please go check out Friend and Foe Adventure Co. and go follow Riley and the podcast on Twitter at FF Adventure Co. And yeah, I think that is the end then. So again, thank you so much for coming on and thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. It was an absolute blast to record, and it was a great time being able to speak with Riley and just like explore this game because I have such a need to play now. It's absolutely insane. But thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, please make sure to leave a review for this episode or even the podcast in general if you've been enjoying it so far. It means the absolute world to me and I would really appreciate it. Make sure as well that you follow the RPG Goblin on our social medias, at the RPG Goblin on Twitter and at the RPG Goblin on Instagram, but with a dot between each of the words. I want to say thank you so much again to Riley for coming on and talking about Bunkers and Badasses with me. It was absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to have them on again and to explore more games, but Bunkers and Badasses, I am just so convinced to play now. It's insane. If you also enjoyed Riley and want to check out what he does, please check out the podcast, Friend and Foe Adventure Co. Their Bunkers and Badasses actual play podcast, which I'm hopefully going to be joining on at some point for a one-shot. And it is, if you enjoyed the game and enjoyed the stories that Riley shared, those happen within that game. You should listen and check it out because it's absolutely fantastic. And you can find Riley on social media at FF Adventure Co. Now, for the next episode of the RPG Goblin, we are going to be going into July already, which is absolutely insane. The next episode will be coming out July 7th. It's going to be about a TTRPG that's in progress right now called Reborn in Power. And I am so very excited for you guys to hear this. I had such a blast exploring and finding out all of the details in the history of this game as it's been getting developed over the last, I want to say, at least 8 years. And it's absolutely fascinating. I bring on the creator, Matt, from the Arthadian anthologies, and we just delve right into the system and explore it. So make sure to look out for that when it comes out, which again is on July 7th. But I think that is it for today. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode, and I'll see you next time.